Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Eva Kurilova, who is a copywriter up in Canada and somebody who I stumbled upon a couple years ago in the social media stratosphere and who's always filled my heart with happiness. And she disappeared for a while and I saw her come back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get this girl on record before she ferrets herself away again. I don't know if ferret's a derogatory term. I didn't want to say scurry, but disappears before she leaves. So I proposed that she come on my show and she said, sure. And then we started talking. This is a character sketch of somebody that most of you probably haven't heard of or won't have heard of until she gets to business, writing what she really wants to write, something other than copy for corporations. It's hard to sell somebody as somebody. She's just a human being and a cool human being at that. So let's start from there and introduce you to Eva Kurilova. You work from home mostly?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do writing. So that's why I'm on Twitter all the time.
Okay.
Procrastinating. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm a recovering writer myself. Once I discovered the audio video format, I'm like, why have I been struggling to be a writer for so long? This is much more my speed.
That might happen to me in the future. We'll see. I want to do more writing, like for myself, because I just do it for work.
Okay. Technical stuff or?
Like copywriting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for businesses and SEO and marketing and things like that.
Okay.
So. Yeah, and it's just I'm pretty swamped with that, so I don't have much time for my own work. So it would be nice to move over, shift over, and do some of my own stuff under my own name. One day, hopefully.
What are some of the things you'd like to tackle under your own name?
Well, the things I tweet about, I guess, mostly. I want to get more involved in actual real life stuff, like not just tweeting all the time. So I would write about that probably.
Well, what generally speaking, for somebody who doesn't know your Twitter activity, what is like the region of reality that you're most interested in ironing out the kinks of?
Well, the gender stuff, of course. That's mostly what I talk about, especially in regards to Canada and what it's doing here. Women's rights and how it's impacting kids and gay people, all of that, pretty much. And probably maybe venture into like postmodernism and things like that. But yeah, the gender things would be first and foremost. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Prior to gender, if gender didn't exist as a problem, and the GCs got their way, and it just doesn't exist anymore, what would you be dealing with, like the questions? Like, is there something before gender that gender, like, kind of will eventually lead to or leads from in your mind?
If that wasn't an issue,
yeah,
I would probably just be talking about how best to live, how to be honest, I guess, I'm really into religions and spirituality and things like that. So that would be more my focus, I think. Yeah.
What religious spiritual tradition resonates with you? Are you
all of them?
You're a polymath?
Yeah. I studied all of them. I got a degree in religious studies. So yeah, I really liked Buddhism. I really liked Christianity. I really liked Hinduism. That was a huge interest for me for a few years there. So yeah, I got super into that, which is why today I just really see a lot of what's going on. It kind of looks really religious from my point of view. So I think that's why I got really interested in all of this.
Religious how? Like founded on a system of belief or fundamental and evangelical or?
Evangelical, yeah. Like I just think people are really treating it like a religion. Like a lot of these beliefs that you just have to believe in and profess faith in. And they have all these statements of faith, like trans women are women and things like that. It really seems to be a substitute for the religious impulse in a lot of people, I think. So, yeah.
When were you aware of your own religious impulse?
Well, it's an interesting question. I guess when I switched over to study religious studies, I was in psychology at first, and that was a bit too materialistic. Huh. And so in my third year, I got really depressed being there, so I switched degrees into religious studies, and that was a lot of fun. I liked it way more than psychology, which it had a lot of psychology, so yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing about psychology, and I'm fascinated by it, and I employ it, and I gravitate toward it, but again, there's this kind of, well, one, it's a soft science, and if you're a psychologist and you have a patient, no two patients are going to be the same, so you're kind of, from what I gather, you kind of just listen a lot and then start to help somebody kind of craft their own, well, one way of putting it is narrative, but then there's these so-called disorders, moral corruption or something like that, like a narcissist or a sociopath, somebody who's very far in one direction. You can give them a bunch of tools, but that doesn't necessarily make them a good person. It might make them seem like a better person, and maybe in seeming that way, they're less of a bad person in their environment. But psychology seems like it is like a religious, it's study of the soul. But so it's circling around religion, but it can't really get into what religious meaning is.
No, it can't. I mean, it's interesting you bring up the soul, because that's pretty much why I left, because I had this history of psychology class, and one of the first topics we were supposed to discuss for some reason in psychology was why people have this idea of a soul. But it was really clear, and this was just one professor, but it was really clear he wanted us to come at it from just one perspective. All the people who said that it's just because we didn't know enough about the human mind or things like that, he really welcomed those answers. But if you tried to say that maybe there was something more to it, he didn't really like that. And I wrote like a little discussion paper, and he marked it terribly. And after that, I was like, I'm done with this. So,
what were you arguing for on behalf of the soul?
I was just arguing that it wasn't necessarily just because we didn't know any better, that there could be reasons why people think we have one. Things like that mostly. I was even referencing like William James and the founder of modern psychology. I said he didn't believe that was a stupid idea. Like he wrote a whole book on like mystical experiences. So that's what I said. And after that, I just thought this isn't the place for me.
That James book was really profound when I read it in my early 20s. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I'd always been, I grew up in the church. Well, I grew up in many churches. We moved around a lot. And then my dad eventually became a pastor. So we always had a very strong religious framework that we were dealing with. And even when I was struggling with belief and religion and stuff, I never could conceive of there not being a God. Like that was never a question for me, just because of the own experiences that I've had. And when I read William James, Varieties of Religious Experience, and then looking at all the things that I was longing for in Christianity was the experience, when they talk about the Holy Spirit, and like it seems like something that's tactile, and it was in my life. So, I never resisted the spiritual. But I had to wrestle with religious meaning to kind of come at it and kind of strain it of the authoritarianism that my imagination or my childhood had kind of put in place of a lot of the language within Christianity was in
totally same here. I had a really similar experience. I grew up in Catholicism because we're from Slovakia. And so I think when I was a teenager, I just thought I was a whole lot smarter, and I just ditched all that. And but then slowly when I was around 18, I think I started to kind of get back into it. I started picking up books about spiritual things, and so it sort of seeped back into my life. I still struggle a lot. Like, I just feel like I just so easily doubt everything. Like I've read so much, and like I've read so many other books about people having religious experiences, mystical experiences, and I still like I have like a really strong will to believe, but at the same time, it's like too good to be true, I guess. I have a hard time accepting that these things can be real in a way. Like yeah, I'm always sabotaging myself, you know. So things like yeah. So that's something I'm really trying to work towards right now, is to just develop, I guess, a deeper spiritual life, because right now I'm a little bit lost. So and same as you, I never could conceive that there wasn't like a God, you know. And I used to think I was so much better than everyone, like, because I always thought, well, yeah, sure, I believe in God, but not in that way, not in that small-minded way, you know. But now I see how for some people it can work out that for God to be like a father figure or like a more immediate presence, right? So I'm more accepting of that nowadays as well. For me, though, I don't have that kind of relationship, but I can see how it can benefit people and how it can be very real to them. So.
Well, then when you say that you would like to develop a more spiritual life, how do you conceive of spirituality? Is there another language that we can use? Import consciousness in there, mindfulness, or widen the metaphor?
Yeah, like mindfulness is a big part of it. I think when I'm being really mindful, I feel it more, I think. I like to be more, I guess, meditative, more prayerful too. Just saying thanks for everything in my life, I guess, is what I'm sort of focusing on. Sometimes before bed, I try to remember, okay, I should, you know, say thanks for all these wonderful things I have. And so I try to do that. And when I do, I feel a lot better, because I struggle with feeling depressed a lot. So it helps.
Do you mind talking about that? Is that, is it a mental state, as in like a cognitive state where you begin to think about things and it kind of gets darker, or is it kind of, does it well up from like a pre-cognitive level, like just a feeling?
Yeah, I get a lot of, I think it's very, very physical. Like I think there's something actually sometimes wrong with my brain. I'll go through bouts. It's been a few years now, but I'll go through bouts where I just can't get out of bed, and I just struggle a lot. Day to day, I will have like intrusive thoughts and things like that. It's not something I talk about a lot.
Okay.
But I always just try to find ways to just feel better, feel happier, feel more at peace, because I find that a bit hard to do. So, so I'm trying to sort of turn to that and be more mindful, which I find really, if I'm in the moment and enjoying myself, it's much easier. So, yeah.
Confession, part of the reason I wanted to speak with you is because every time I see a picture of you, my heart lightens. Like every picture of you, like on Facebook and Twitter, I'm like, oh, this is a happy, she's giving me happiness. she's shining something on me.
That's really nice to hear. That's very good to hear. Well, part of what makes me feel better is I really love to just be with people and make them happy. And I'm sorry, I'm tearing up.
So am I.
That's just great to hear. I mean, I just like, that's my main goal, is I just want to help other people, which I don't even know how to help myself. But,
well, maybe that is helping yourself.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Like, I think a lot of people say, oh, you have to work on yourself before you can help others and things like that. But for me, it really goes hand in hand, I think. And that's why that's why I talk about all this stuff, because my goal is less to be angry at trans people or the movement or whatever. I just want people to, you know, be brave enough to speak and be honest with themselves and not lie to themselves. Yeah, things like that.
When did you move from Slovakia?
Oh, when I was 5.
Okay. Do you have much memory of the old country?
Surprisingly. I do. I think because it was such a stark difference. You know, like a lot of people say you don't remember much from before you're 5. And maybe I'm making a lot of stuff up, but because it was so, like, we were in Slovakia and then we were in Canada. So I'm able to differentiate the memories from that. But yeah, we lived in a little village. So I remember a lot of that in the mountains. It was very idyllic.
like what level of village? Like there was a watering well? Was there running water? Or like there was a lot of...
There was running water. I think the current population is around 500. I'm not too sure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It had all that, like it had running water and everything and all that.
Okay.
But literally right beside our house was a path to like a creek in the mountains. And so that was nice. So I remember a lot of it, actually. The village had like 4 streets. But yeah, my parents brought us over here, which I'm very happy about. Because it was quite a religious place. Like, in the way that I think I wouldn't have been very accepted. So, yeah. So now we're in Canada. We're in Calgary, which is also close to mountains, which is wonderful.
Do you have a path to a creek out that window there?
I don't, but I do have, like, my very own little forest.
Oh.
We back out onto an escarpment, and I don't know if you can see. There's just there's just trees.
Oh, wow.
We get coyotes come through.
Oh, okay. Is that wall your own doing? Did you do that wall yourself?
No. We're actually just renting this house.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, that stonework is really cool. Unfortunately, somebody told me that a Nazi did that stonework. It was a really random comment.
Define Nazi nowadays, right?
Apparently, this was probably decades ago, but he had like a swastika flag up at the top tier there. So he was like a Nazi.
A card carrying.
It was my neighbor. He's lived here since probably the 60s. He didn't say any more than that. I was just like, okay.
Huh.
So that's unfortunate. But the current owner, he did all the like really nice woodwork and stuff like that. That's his doing. So yeah, I love it here.
Why did your parents move to Canada? More opportunity?
Oh, because it's because it was after communism fell. Because they
lived. Your parents grew up under communist rule then?
Yeah, they did. And so as soon as they could get out, they took the opportunity, and they did. And it was really hard because we got accepted to Canada because my dad had his own business, which was never doing that well. Like, it was so hard for the first few years we were here because he had to keep that business going. He couldn't just take a normal job. Otherwise, they sent us back. That's just the conditions we were here under. So it was very, very difficult. But they made it work, and I'm very happy. Yeah. We went to Vancouver first, and then we ended up in Calgary. Yeah.
Do you have... what's a stronger influence? I don't know if this is a proper question, but what's a stronger influence, like communist life or Slovakian, pre-Slovakian culture? Like in like the background of kind of like...
For me?
When you compare Canada to Slovakia, or when you compare your family life to Canada more broadly, is there kind of a heavy consciousness of life in communist rule, or kind of more heavy consciousness in the kind of traditional Slovakian frame of mind or point of view? Or...
Not so much communist rule, because by the time I was born, it was over.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the first things my parents did was took us on a trip across all of Western Europe because they finally could. So that's really cool. I mean, before I was 5, I traveled all over Europe, and I don't remember almost anything except for Legoland. I remember Legoland. I saw the Eiffel Tower. I don't remember. I remember eating chicken nuggets in Paris. But yeah, so communism didn't factor into it too much at all, except just from what I hear from my parents now, which is why my parents don't like what's happening in Canada, because they just feel like it's kind of reverting back to what they lived under. So
how could you explain that more? Because that's a constant critique, especially from immigrants. They're seeing signs of something that disturbs them from what they left or were freed from by coming to the West or the Americas. What are some of the aspects of things that are happening in Canada, maybe in Western culture more broadly, the American-Canada spit swap that's going on?
They feel... I mean, my parents, they're a little bit on the conspiracy side of things, so they are quite critical. Like, they really don't believe in COVID. But I do, as much as I still do value a lot of what they say. They say they feel even more controlled here now than they did, under communism.
Okay.
Just in terms of, they really don't. I mean, now we have a vaccine mandate coming in, and I'm sure that they're super angry. I haven't talked to them since.
Okay.
But they definitely, they think that there's less you can say. They think it's very similar to like the kind of information you can access, and it's hard to talk to them, but I still appreciate it. They just really, really feel a creeping sense of that they're being really controlled.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do agree with that insight. I think I don't know if it's yet as bad as it was under communism. I think they view it very, very critically, but they definitely have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah. So the emergency powers that our governments are taking due to this COVID-19 virus and the toll it's taken on portions of our population, it's different over age groups and stuff. That could be just emergency powers. Who knows? But when it comes bundled with, I guess, when you think of Trudeau, how he's behaving on the front of COVID is one thing, but also the way that Canada is rolling out the gender issue itself is wonky. It's wonky, and it's backed up by compulsory kind of mandate.
It is,
to act and to think and to speak and to change your language. I mean, it's very Orwellian, and Orwell was...
It's incredibly Orwellian. It's very authoritarian. That is a very scary aspect of it. I don't think people realize just how much it's creeping up to like total control over what you can say and think. And you're right, the mandates and things, it could just be emergency. Like, I'm trying to just view it as like, maybe one day they'll relent this stuff, but it's scary. I think people don't realize when they give away that much power, they're not going to get it back necessarily.
That's the question.
But yeah. And I just...
Yeah.
Just yesterday it was released that here in our province we'd have the vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, which I really didn't think would happen here. And I just think that's way too far. We're in a pretty bad situation. Our healthcare system isn't doing good at all. We're the worst province. I understand.
Okay.
But I think that was the wrong move for sure. I don't agree with it at all. So
if our governments, if Canada and America can, institute different authoritarian mandates, emergency, and then maybe like little cultural mandates here and there on what a woman is or what a man is, but they still provide for us, or they allow us to provide for ourselves. If we are not just bred and circused into amelioration, but if we can still make a living, and that living is still, broadly speaking, better than average, do you think that it'll be okay? You think that it's fine? Is it worth giving up? What's worth giving up in order to...
I don't think there's very much worth giving up, because I don't think it's ever going to stop. Like, like I'll be surprised. Like with COVID, things are just getting more and more like authoritarian. I'll be really surprised if they ever walk any of that stuff back. And I just feel like people who want the mandates now, great, they trust this vaccine, they believe in the science, that's awesome, but what happens next time there's a medical treatment they don't want, and now we've created the system to force them to do it. That's why I don't agree with that. Like, I think the way to get people to, they should be focused on putting out good information if they really believe in this. Like, I know that's tough to get the population to, there's a lot of anti-vax stuff going on, I get it. But to force people to do it doesn't make any sense to me. And the gender stuff too, I mean, that's just never stopping. That's just getting worse and worse.
When did that land on your radar? When did you first start feeling weird or picking up something odd on that? Maybe
just a few years ago. I was always I feel like I was just kind of shoehorned into accepting it in a way. Yeah. And a couple of years ago, I started really thinking that if I was a kid today, I would totally jump on board all of this. So I started sort of bringing it up with my partner and stuff. And, we brushed it off. But then I stumbled upon the gender critical subreddit, and I was like, oh my God, other people think this stuff. And instantly I was converted. So, I saw people talking about how hateful it was, and I was like, okay, I'll go check this out myself. And I was like, gender critical, okay, that sounds pretty good. Like, shouldn't we be critical of this stuff? Like, why is it bad? And I started to read the posts, and I was like, okay, I get it. I didn't agree with everything, but that was around like 2018, I think. And my partner of 14 years nearly left me when I started bringing this stuff up.
Oh no.
She was like, what's going on with you lately? You're like, we need to accept everybody. We need to accept all these people. Like, and I was like on my way to a haircut, and I was just texting her. I was like, we'll talk about this later. And then by the time my haircut was done, she had responded back to me and was like, no, you're right about everything. I understand.
Oh. Huh.
So then we were on the same page.
That's fortunate.
Yes, it is. Because I just sent her a text. I was like, look, I'm not a bad person. Like, I have reasons why I've started to think differently. So then she was like, you're right. You're not like hateful or anything. So let's talk about this when you get home. So we did. And yeah.
Well, that rainbow flag is very powerful. Well, all flags are very powerful. And when it's gone through different iterations, culturally and then politically. And as a flag, it comes to represent a team. And then when people are acting as a team or as a group, there's basically these kind of protocols that everybody accepts in that.
Yeah.
And one maneuver that is being highly vilified on the Twitter front and in actual politics is that the L and the G and the B are saying we're kind of different than the T. And we don't know what this Q thing is. Well, but anybody's a Q. Like a bunch of hetero people are now Q, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if everything's founded on acceptance, then where does it end? Where does it go? How did you? Was there cognitive dissonance when you stumbled upon gender critical? Where you're like,
yes,
this isn't correct. But what's correct? What's the funny feel? What was the process of working through those? Feelings of tension?
Well, I had years of cognitive dissonance. I was living with that. I used to, whenever I would come across just a really super progressive queer ideas, I felt like I had to accept that. But silently in my head, I was sort of making fun of it, But I still considered myself good and progressive. And I never fully bought into all this stuff. But if you had asked me, I would have, of course, said yes. Like, I totally am on board with all of that. Like, I used to go to that horrible website, Everyday Feminism. And
my channel's basically Every Other Day Feminism at this point. So.
No, but it was like, I would like hate read that stuff because I was like, this is what I'm supposed to believe. But I still, if you had asked me, I would have said I'm totally leftist, I'm totally progressive. And then I think slowly over time there was more cracks. I just couldn't handle the cognitive dissonance anymore. And especially when trans kids started to become a big thing, that's when I just really was like, I can't accept this. Like, I definitely would have, as a kid today, thought that I was a boy. And there would have been all these adults cheering me on, and I just was like, how can that be? Like, there's so many young kids who would grow up to be just like me. Or straight, or, and they're just being pushed in this direction, and it's ridiculous. And even after I had that thought, I wasn't quite over the edge yet until I found gender critical and just instantly it was like, at least I'm not alone. I think that helps.
Okay.
Because I thought I was the only one who was thinking there's a problem here, right? Like I would hear their slogans, trans women are women, and I would think like, okay, I can accept that, but I just saw it as like a social nicety, and I thought we all know the reality here. We all know we're just being polite and nice and accommodating people. But then I started to see that, no, actually some people really believe that quite literally. And so I just thought, we need to stop that. I can't continue on. I have to say I don't believe in that. So, yeah, that was a few years ago now, and then I And then I got on Twitter, and the rest is history.
Well, history's not done with you yet, I'm sure.
And then I left Twitter for a year, and then I came back.
You did. I remember we were friends, and then you were gone, and then you came back. I'm like, oh, I missed you.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just needed some time off.
Yeah, it is very exhausting.
It is, but then I noticed, well, I got a little bit scared. I got a little bit scared for my work because my name and my face is attached to it. Like, this is quite precarious. I think if I had a different job, I would be too scared to do this. So I got a little bit scared, but then I found that it was sort of seeping out into my Facebook. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I was commenting on things, and I just kept, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is much more close to my personal private life. Why don't I just get back on Twitter? So then I did that. I just couldn't help it. Any news story that came out, I was just typing up long comments. Yeah. As
a professional communicator, how would you communicate the gender critical ethos or the ideas? What's the succinct, and then maybe even clean up some of the perceptions of itself, how it communicates and how people view it? And we don't have to do it in the light of, some sort of turf war or anything like that, but just as a standalone set of principles, what is it reduced to? How can we reduce it?
I guess for me, I don't really consider myself to have that label, really. I gladly embrace it just because, but I guess for me, it's just being critical of gender, like the name says, like not putting people into boxes based on stereotypes. I totally know there's differences between men and women. I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I think that it's just really, really, how do I say it, I guess? It's just saying that your sex doesn't have to determine how you act and what you like, and that if you like, stereotypically if you like things of the other sex, doesn't make you, necessarily the other sex. So that's kind of it. I wish I could be more eloquent with it, but
well, I surprised. I threw that on you, and you probably take time to craft your elegant copy. So
yes, I like crafting tweets. I am not so good on the fly, but
I'm dealing with that myself. Well, you said it was like a religion, and when we were talking about the religious experience, is there a religious experience of like this mystical gender experience?
There does seem to be, the way people talk about transition, and they come out with like this new self and this new life, and it's
conversion.
It seems a lot like transubstantiation, right, in Catholicism, where the bread and the wine is literally transformed into the body and blood of Jesus. And I just
sacralized wine is blood, or sacramental blood is blood. If we reduced it into a tagline, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's the same kind of, like in Catholicism, you're supposed to just believe it, and at least they admit that that's faith, right? And I think that's what we're being asked to do: just believe that men can become women and women can become men, and this is by some magical force, and we're supposed to just accept that. I guess I always say it's a thought terminating cliche. They're slogans. Because you're just not meant to ask any questions about them.
They will some radical some people who communicate under the banner of progressive trans rights will say end of discussion or no argument or it's over. So they're literally wanting to terminate thought, inquiry, back and forth, anything like that.
They are, and I can't stand that. I mean, like,
why not? Why can't you just accept it? Why do you have to? What is it about you that makes you push back?
I really, really hate the thought of being like controlled in any way, that you can't ask questions about something. I don't really know where that comes from, but that just makes me so upset that you can't that you can't ask questions about things. I like to discuss things. I'm okay if people disagree with me. I respect a lot of people who all hate each other. Like, I have a lot of heroes that I know they don't like my other heroes, and that's fine. It's just unwillingness, because they're just forcing this on everyone. And I think that's why I'm also so angry about all the COVID things, because I don't like when things are forced on people. I'm just really, really against that. So, which I'm sure most people are, but I just get really sad when I see people afraid to speak their real opinions, what they really think, you know, for fear that they'll lose their job or their friends. I just wish we didn't have to live like that, I guess, essentially.
Why? Why? It seems like that was anathema 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, like that kind of attitude was basically fascistic. But now it's the people who are promoting that attitude that are very trigger happy with the fascist, accusing their enemies of being fascist. It's just odd that we've kind of rounded a corner for some reason.
Oh yeah, I mean I've been called a fascist, I think, which is hilarious. You had, I forget his name, the one who does the Disaffected podcast. You had him on.
Yeah, Josh.
And I really like Josh. There he is. I really like what he had to say. I thought that really, I mean, it doesn't necessarily capture everything that's going on, but I think it explains a lot. I think you have these people, these narcissists and these psychopaths who are sort of at the forefront of this movement right now. I don't want to blame everything on just people with personality disorders necessarily, but it does explain a lot. I think it's really taken over the culture, and people are just so afraid to speak up, and everything is so emotional, and everything is so like we're just valuing emotions, but only certain people's emotions is what gets to me. You know, we're supposed to really baby these people who would get really sad if you don't validate them, but then what about the people they're hurting, right? And I guess I just don't like seeing that hypocrisy. I think a lot of it is very hypocritical. So, yeah, that's where I come from.
So when you're typing up your Facebook comments, what kind of, just speaking writer to writer, what kind of production values or what kind of voice are you aiming toward, or what kind of voice is manifesting? Could you describe that? That's kind of a weak question, I know, but like, is there the proper way to communicate? How do you think is the most effective way to communicate, and how do you end up doing that?
On these issues specifically?
Yeah, well, because you're talking about these are very emotional issues, and if you're going to engage in that, you have to engage with emotion, and you are engaging with emotion. So how do you put that in the proper way? How do you...
Well, in my tweets, I just try really hard to I just try to state whatever I believe, whatever I think is true. It's not necessarily that that's correct. It's just I don't want to lie. Okay. I try not to pay attention to all the kind of emotive stuff that's going on in the background. I try to just be a little bit silly with it. I mean, I don't really want to, sometimes people go on long screeds defending, you know, what they think and stuff. And I try to just stick really to just facts and just point out really the absurd things that people are saying. You know, there was a quote tweet I did last night that was to that Nicholas Sperling in BC, who was asking, like, how do you tell people's sex if even doctors can't tell, right? And I just said, I have eyes. Like, and because a lot of people will respond to that with how it's so easy, and they'll do multi-tweet kind of things, and I'm just like, I don't want to indulge this ridiculous view of the world they have. Okay. Like, I just feel like I don't want to capitulate to, I don't want to play along. I just want to be as brash with what I think and how I see the world, you know, because I think a lot of the times we spent almost apologizing, like, sorry, I don't see it that way. But so yeah, that's how I approach it. putting bumpers on the honesty. You're just like, no, let's be honest. Let's yeah, pretty much. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And again, it's not that I think being honest means I'm right. It's just I don't want to play along and play pretend anymore, because I think I used to do that. To be ameliorate and accommodating of people's Naturally, I'm a doormat. Like my natural disposition in life is to be very accommodating, is to be very nice, to think about other people's feelings, and of course, I still do. I really value being kind, but not at this level. Not when we've let people sort of take over society, on the backs of people just willing to lay down and say, yeah, here you go. So
at some point there was a tipping point where your kindness, your value of kindness had to make room for a higher value of honesty. Is that fair?
Pretty much, yeah, that's fair. And I'd say I still really value kindness, just in the real sense, not in the sense where I'll lie to you to make you happy, like that's still something I value very highly. Like I said, I want to make the people in my life happy, and I'm really not a jerk, just on Twitter. So it really brings out that side.
Why is honesty, even if it doesn't make people feel good, why is that still a better form of kindness?
I don't know. I guess I haven't formulated a reason why I think that. I just think you don't usually end up in a good place if you're lying to yourself, if you're deluded about something. I just think as a general rule, that's not something people should want to do to themselves. It's not a comfortable place to be in. Like I said, I spent those years being quite dissonant, reading things that I thought I was supposed to agree with, and silently I didn't, and it was a very strange place to be. It felt much better to finally admit to myself that that's not me. Like, I don't have to pretend I agree with these things. So I want other people to have that as well, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I do it perfectly at all.
Well, yeah. Was there a moment where you had to learn honesty, or were you always basically a guileless, honest person?
Oh, I had to work at it for sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Over the last few years, I'm definitely just trying to develop that in myself and to be honest and not just tell people what I think they want to hear. That's something that took a lot of work for me. So, yeah, I just don't want to pretend anymore. That's what I think.
In religious studies, was there conflict in that you had to get through about conceptions of the world that were against you or your identity or other things? What was the most challenging thing about that study?
I actually just really enjoyed it. I didn't find it to be too challenging. The worst thing was near the end of my degree, like all the basic classes where I just got to learn about different religions. That was great. I loved seeing how people viewed the world. I mean, yeah, sure, you encounter a lot of ideas that are quite, I guess, misogynistic sometimes. But I was able to frame that historically. I never felt too personally attacked by that. So that wasn't a huge problem. It was just near the end where actually like postmodernism and stuff started creeping in that I decided not to continue on to like grad school. I just got my bachelor's degree and I just thought I've had enough of this. So I stopped after that. So, yeah.
With regards to that, was postmodernism creeping in across the entire academy and your entire experience, or was it you were getting high enough in the grade where things you broke through the clouds into this astral sort of postmodern viewpoint?
That was around 2012, so I think things were kind of starting in the universities. I didn't feel it too much in my like more basic courses and stuff, but once we got to the higher level stuff where we would really sit around and discuss and write papers and things like that, that's when I noticed it start creeping in. That's when I noticed things were so focused on language and constructivism, and I really didn't like that. What I liked about my degree was that it was quite practical. You learned about the religions and the philosophies and stuff. But then the way we started discussing things, it wasn't too big. I didn't have a name for it at the time. I just thought that if I continued, I would end up navel gazing basically for like getting my master's and my doctorate. I just thought I would have to I could tell there was a certain perspective I would have to take, I think. So I just decided I didn't really want to continue on with that in like the academic world, and I just left and started writing for myself. Yeah, I first encountered it actually. I did this paper for a class on. I did this paper on mysticism. We were supposed to identify a topic that was like in contention, and I thought, okay, the mystical experience. And there was one side that kind of viewed it as like an actual pure experience, and one side there was the constructivists, which was my first introduction to like constructivists.
Okay.
With language. And so I was way in over my head, but that's when I encountered that some people had this idea that language kind of created reality. And I just really didn't like that. I was like, what is this? So I totally sided with the other side of the debate in my paper. And then I kind of started noticing it sort of everywhere, I guess. Yeah. And I think at that time, intersectionality was coming into it as well. So
identitarianism of some sort?
Yeah.
And epistemic standpoint theory kind of stuff?
Yeah, just mildly. But I saw it coming and I ran. So, yeah.
Why did you have a gut reaction to constructivism or post-structuralism? Like the language creates reality. Why did you dislike that?
At the time, I guess I didn't really know. I just knew I didn't like that perspective. It just didn't seem right to me. It seemed so like, why are we focusing on language so much? Like, as I've, since then, it's been like 7-8 years, I've thought about it more, and I just don't like that standpoint, because I think it's kind of a perversion of the fact that language is very important. It's super powerful. Okay. I think a lot of people don't realize how powerful it is, which is why when you're having these mantras like trans women are women and stuff, they don't realize the power it's having over people, right? Like, but it's not that it's creating reality, in my opinion. It's that it's shaping how people view reality and perceive it. So it has that power, but I think postmodernism, it says that is reality, which to me is like false. Like it's like this false idol, like, and then people stop and they don't try to work through it to actual reality underneath, right? Okay. They just get kind of stuck. So I just feel like it's almost, it's like a weird perversion of the fact that language is very, very powerful. Yeah.
Speaking as a writer, speaking who turns writing into rent.
Yeah. Well, I can see that. I have so much fun crafting my tweets because I can see what people respond to, what they don't respond to, and that's been kind of fun, But then I feel like that's a lot of power. Not that I have it, but that is, you can see how much sway you can have over people just with the words you say, right? But that's not reality. That's just sort of control and power, know? Mm-hmm. So I really don't like postmodernism.
Okay. Well, is that kind of what you were saying about that there's all these different things, but one of the things that we intersect with is gender, and there are aspects of gender ideology that people are treating like a language with the mantras and with forms of religious experience. And we can do a lot of transposing of religious concepts onto the gender thing. But when we take into account your reaction to postmodernism, is that, I'm going to try to phrase this as a question. Do you think that mysticism, religion, spirituality is a place of getting in contact and respecting reality and then going back into the languaged cultural sphere, maybe? And so it's important to not overdetermine culture and language, because that means that you would never be able to touch anything other than language.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to put it. That's what I was trying to sort of get at, is I think it really, really blocks you from accessing reality, whether you view that in a mystical sense or just a purely material sense. I think it really is like this block from people's minds. I think they can't quite move past that. A lot of it, honestly, a lot of the kind of just language and it really reminds me of like Buddhist texts, Mahayana Buddhist texts, which use so much language. They throw so much language at you. Some of them are so long, and they just sort of mystify you with words. But once in a while, they'll sort of try and shake you out of it and tell you, but this isn't real. I feel like what postmodernism is lacking is shaking people out of it and saying like that, but that's not really real, in a sense. Like okay. I don't know, I just get that sense with the use of language to sort of mystify people. Like the Buddhist text did that a lot. Okay. But they would always just go back around and say, but this isn't reality. This isn't suchness. That if you're only looking at these words, you're missing the point. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Most postmodernism is, I think it comes from a similar impulse of shocking. And there's a lot, especially when it becomes applied postmodernism with regards to activism or shaping discourse or power, disrupting power. There is a desire to wake people up and shake it up and deconstruct and toss the scales off people's eyes, but they don't have any answer on the other side. There's no positive sense, and I think it probably because it comes from the academy, because it comes from a bunch of people who are just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. So if there's anything on the other side of the magic trick, the whole house of cards in a way would fall, because they're in this really refined echo chamber in a sense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's what I didn't want to get stuck into, just talking and talking and talking and talking, right? Like as much as I love to talk, I do. Yeah. I could sort of see that if I followed my academic life, that's kind of what I would have gotten stuck into. And I was like, no, I just kind of want to live. So that was, I guess, my reaction to all this current stuff that's going on started back then in university. I just didn't really know it yet. After I left, I still was playing along as like a good progressive who believed all this stuff, But yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. I think it's just too much talking in a way, and people don't want to face reality. I'm astounded every day by how much people can just lie to themselves. It's not that I feel like I'm the judge of that, but just really, really basic things like that. People can't change sex and things like that. Like we've reached the point where we can't even be honest about that. And I think that's quite scary, honestly.
What's on the other side of that that's scary?
I mean, if you can make people believe that, or at least pretend they believe that, I feel like they'll believe anything. Like, I don't know where that quote is from. Is it Voltaire that if you can make people believe absurdities, they can commit atrocities? I don't know where that's from. But
we can just say Voltaire and somebody will correct us with a 7,000 page article tracing the origins of the phrase.
I don't know, but that always sticks in my head, and I try not to be hyperbolic. I try not to be, but I can see that. A lot of atrocities that have happened in the world is because people just sort of lost their minds and just believed things that maybe weren't really real. And I get quite concerned to see people doing that, And go ahead.
If you are living in language, if you are a producer of thought and meaning and participating in that, how do you do it in such a way where you have integrity with regards to reality? How do you not get lost in your own thoughts?
That's a good question. It's something I have to work on all the time, for sure. I have to check in with myself that I'm not going down a rabbit hole and becoming too stuck in a certain way of thinking or ideology. Okay. That's why, I'll gladly embrace the label TERF, but I don't consider myself a radical feminist. I try not to consider myself any part of any monolithic group in a way.
To preserve your freedom of movement and your ability to touch reality yourself rather than through the mechanism of an ideology or a set of beliefs.
Exactly. I feel like people can get stuck in anything. I mean, I do, of course, in the current debate, I definitely think the turf side is much less crazy, much closer to reality. I do believe that. But I can see people getting caught up in groupthink. I can see people canceling other people because of things they said. And I don't want to get caught up in any of that. You know, I think you really lose sight of reality if you get too far down in any group identity, in a way. And I think because I am a lesbian, I think that was a huge reason why I played along with this for so long, because, you know, you should be LGBT, and it just kind of felt right to keep going and be progressive and accept everything that came after and the queue and all that. So I had to sort of stop and say, okay, I don't need to accept that just because of who I am.
Was there an experience prior to that in, I don't know, middle school or elementary school or high school where you realized that group thinking is not for you? Was there a moment when you became conscious of how important it is for you not to be involved in kind of group thought? Or was the
I don't know if
LGBT thing the first?
Honestly, it was more, I never was too into being stuck in groups and stuff, but it was actually more political, more than like the sexuality thing. I mean, it's harder for me to admit to people that I wouldn't vote liberal than to come out. Like,
well, because they're all liberals and they expect that of you.
Well, but I mean, I live in Calgary, Alberta, but I think most of my friends and family are quite left politically, and so that was always way scarier for people to find out that I'm not. I don't think I'm a conservative, but that I'm not like so liberal. Like that was way scarier than in high school when I realized I was a lesbian and like, oh my God, what will people think of me? Like that was fine. That was not really a huge issue. But later, after leaving university, and especially our 2019 election, that's when I was like, I cannot vote liberal this time. I don't really believe in any of that. And
what was in 2019, and what was the issue that stuck out to you as something you couldn't go for?
Well, we had an election. And that was already after Trudeau's government.
Was it like federal or state?
It was a federal election.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we had the Liberals in power at that time. And in 2017, they had introduced Bill C-16, which I'm sure you heard about a lot. And I wasn't aware of it at the time at all. I just knew that Jordan Peterson was some jerk who spoke against it. And he didn't want to use people's pronouns. And so I was like, I don't like him either. I knew nothing about him. But by the time 2019 came along, I think I was already on Twitter, and I knew what the Liberals had done in regards to that, and I was aware there was men in women's prisons, things like that. And that wasn't my only issue. There was other political stuff I didn't agree with them on as well, but that was still kind of scary to admit to myself, like, oh my God, like I am not going to vote for the Liberals this time. I did prior to that, so they would legalize marijuana, and I'm happy with that choice. But in 2019, I finally admitted to myself that and it was the first time I went and I voted, and I was actually happy with my choice because I was like, I actually, believe in what I'm doing right now. Okay. But it's still, I don't think I admitted to very many people who I voted for, less than the people I come out to. So that was much more an awakening of like how powerful groupthink can be, and how I would lie to just save face with people, I guess. So, yeah, nowadays I don't care anymore.
Really? At what point did you stop being wary or fearful of being honest on that front?
I think I didn't really. First, I just started speaking my mind, and before long, I had put too much out there to walk it back. So I had to deal with that and just be like, I can't hide this anymore. Like, even if I was to quit Twitter right now, there's like screenshots floating around. I see them once in a while on like Instagram and stuff. And I just think there's no hiding this. I have to just own up to it. Okay. And like on my Facebook, all those comments I would leave on various articles and stuff, it occurred to me like people are seeing this, like my close friends and family. I never got much pushback, which was pretty cool.
There isn't a lot of fallout for you?
No, no.
Because you spent so many years of your life being kind and nice and lifting everybody up that they couldn't let you down in your moment of honesty.
I hope so. I hope it's not because people are intimidated. I hope
You don't want to be a little intimidating? Come on, just a little bit.
just a little, so that they're scared to say anything. I hope that at least it's because I know some people have privately talked to me and they just say they appreciate what I'm saying, and I just hope it's because they respect me and I know that they know that I respect them back. I had one person block me. It was a trans man that I actually really liked and hoped the best for, but no confrontation, just a block. So I think I say what a lot of people are thinking, but just too afraid to come out with. And so in regards to your question, there wasn't really a time where I told myself that I'm just going to be honest now. It was that I had no choice because I had already been honest. That's how I deal with a lot of my anxiety, is I just pretend I'm not anxious. And then I just do the thing and I got to do it. So I just tell myself, no, I'm not one of those people with anxiety. Meanwhile, I am. But that's how I get through. So
if you could start writing not copy tomorrow, what would be, what do you think you would go for first? Is there a big project, or would you do articles, or just kind of lay out your position and then build up?
To start doing my own things. I'm not too sure where I would start. I think inspiration will just have to strike.
Okay. Do you think you'll end up doing journalism, opinion pieces, character studies?
More opinion. I also would love to just start getting more involved in real life stuff, real life activism and protest, and write about that. There is a prison protest Canada-wide this Saturday at all of the prisons, the women's prisons. Unfortunately, there's one up in Edmonton, which is about 4 hours away from me, and I would love to go, but I'm just slammed with work. I can't this time. But part of the reason I got back on Twitter was so I wouldn't miss these events and things, because a couple months ago there was something in Calgary. Linda Blade was there, who I really admire, and I was so sad I had missed it. I totally flew under my radar, and I would have attended. So I was like, okay, I have to get back on Twitter. I have to stay on top of this stuff. So I can't make it to the protest this Saturday, but I am meeting with Heather Mason tomorrow because she's staying nearby before flying out. And she's fantastic, so I'm very excited.
I feel bad for not knowing what is her
Heather
work?
Mason? So
I'm sure I know her, but
oh yeah, anybody who likes anything that I talk about their time is way better spent following her. She is an advocate for women in prison. She's the one who's kind of raising the concern about the transfers of male prisoners into women's prisons, like really violent offenders, sexual offenders. She organized all these protests. She's fantastic. She was in prison herself, and that's how she found out about all of this.
Okay.
And so the fact that she wants to meet me is I can't believe it. So we'll see each other tomorrow night. And I would love to just, if there's any more protests that happen or just events, I'd love to attend. I'd love to write about them, get the word out. Before COVID, I had tickets to GIDYVR in Vancouver for Women's Spaces, Places, and Sports, where it was Megan Murphy, Heather Mason Wood. She was going to be there as well. So that got canceled, of course. But I was so ready to go.
I was planning to go to that, actually. I believe
everybody was planning to go to that. I don't know if you know Mark Emery.
I think so.
Plot.
I need pictures. Actually, I'm best when I hear somebody's voice.
He was going to go to that as well, regardless. And I just thought, oh my God, that would have been like a meeting of all these people. That would have been so cool. So I'm very excited for something like that to happen again. I would move heaven and earth. I'm always very busy with my work, but that's kind of why I want to go more for myself. So I'm not, so I can attend these things. So that's my goal.
Okay. So what? And so,
no, go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
It's your stage. It's just my show.
No, I also might get the chance to meet Amy Ham in a couple of weeks, which is the whole reason really that I went back on Twitter, because I heard about what was happening to her. So I was just, I was just bursting to talk. I was just bursting to like speak to people about all this ridiculous stuff. So I was like, okay, you got to go back. And yeah, so I'm quite excited for things that are coming up.
Well, I'm glad you're back. You brighten up
you.
my timeline. When you're not working and tweeting, what's your manual tactile activity? What do you do outside of brain space?
I walk my dog a lot. She needs a lot of exercise. I love to go bouldering.
Bouldering? Is that like
Yes.
bowling, but with mountainsides?
No, we go to climbing gyms.
Oh, okay.
I spend all summer, at least once or twice a week. We would go bouldering. We have a gym just 5 minutes here from my house, me and my sister mostly. And I got super into that. And we even went outside a few times. There's like this trail nearby, and it leads to some boulders, and we were doing it outside as well. We got crash mats and everything. So that's something I've really gotten into lately, and I love it because sitting and typing all day hurts. Like, it's hard on the body. So I love to go on walks and stuff, but I was so happy to pick up that new hobby.
Is there is there some sort of lingo, like a type 4 boulder, or like some sort of weird moves that you have? Is it like a judo with all these different forms and positions? Or you just kind of figure it out on the fly?
There's different grades. If you go to the climbing gym, you have these different routes. And I think most gyms use the V system, but our gym uses the C system. So it goes C1 through 8, I believe. And I'm not that good. I can do C1s and C2s. I'm just starting on C3s because I got better climbing shoes, so I'm getting better. They're quite expensive, but they are worth it. No, that's been so fun. I really need to... My younger sister is amazing at it. Like, she's
a little spider.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she's incredible, and she does these specific workouts to get better at it. Versus me, I just don't have time for that. Yeah, yeah. But because we all got into watching sport climbing over the last year, because it just was at the Olympics this year, so that was exciting.
Oh.
I pulled 2 all-nighters so I could watch the finals.
Wait, and what are they graded on? Is it like kind of a speed competition, or is it a...
There's 3 different disciplines. There's speed, there's bouldering, and then there's lead, which is the tall wall climbing.
Okay.
Because it was their first time at the Olympics, they combined all 3, which really is a bit unfortunate because you have speed specialists are not that great at other types of climbing.
Okay.
So next Olympics, they're going to have a few more events. It'll be better.
So is bouldering more an on-the-fly puzzle that you have to figure out?
Yep.
As opposed to speed, it's just like one pattern that everybody memorizes and then competes with?
Yes. Oh, you should look into this. You'd love it. Bouldering is great because you don't need any like ropes or harness or anything. The walls go up to, I don't know, this is a total... maybe 20 feet, maybe higher, and there's crash mats, so like you just fall and you're fine. So that's really cool. I am going to start trying climbing the walls, like with the harness and everything. But all summer we were just bouldering. Like, it was so much fun to do with my sisters. I have 3 sisters, and then my partner started joining us as well. So that was amazing. Yeah, she got super
Boulder
into it.
clan.
Yeah, I was really happy that my partner Tara joined us because it's something we could do together. So, because
you can push her off and laugh at her as she falls or something.
I cheer her on. Oh my gosh, she started months after I did, and she's way better than me now. Like, she surpassed me right away. I was like trying not to be jealous.
Well, so what is bouldering then?
Okay, so
compared to those other 2 that you're saying. Oh.
So you have like the wall, and you have different patterns, different routes that the route setters have put there for you. And it's like different types of holds. And the goal is just to climb to the top. Okay. Yeah, and you have to touch the top with both hands, and then you're done. And you did it.
And then you just let go.
Yeah, you should down climb a little bit. I made the mistake of just jumping down too often, and my leg still hurts from a couple of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been a fantastic hobby to have because it really helps me mentally to just fill my days and have things to do, because writing is you're quite isolated. So that's been a big issue for me over these last few years since I started.
Oh, and then COVID comes on top of that.
Yeah, that made it difficult too. But I wasn't the best at following the rules, so.
Do you think that there's a way to make writing less lonely, or is that just something that you have to allow it to be?
Nowadays it's pretty cool because a lot of the projects that I'm on, we talk in Slack, so that's kind of neat. Sometimes we do video meetings, which I don't really like, but so it does feel more like you have a little community.
So like a collaborative kind of environment for writing.
Yep. Yeah, one of the companies that I started working with now, they're much more focused on being collaborative and communicative, and that's been really nice, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, the reason I kind of left Twitter in the first place was because I was going to start working with these guys, and I was just a little bit worried about any possible blowback. It's been fine. I don't think anyone's targeting me at the moment. And, my name is not attached to anything that I do, so I just feel like even if there's some issue, if a client doesn't like what I'm saying, I mean, are they going to sacrifice having good writing that my name is not even attached to? Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of them would still be like, okay, let's just still get her work, So crossing my fingers, I really hope that my online activities and hopefully real life activities don't hurt my client relations and things like that. So I really hope so. I just try to make my work good enough that they don't want to lose me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other way of doing it that comes to mind is by being some sort of journalist, by finding what you were talking about with Amy and Heather and Megan, Linda, etc. Going out, witnessing what they do, participating in that, and then writing about that. Or
I'd love to start something like that for sure.
And if you have the skills, you can probably moonlight on that and see what happens.
Yeah, it's been a long time plan to kind of shift over to doing my own writing, so I have to really just carve out that space, and at least my partner really does support that. She's always saying, yes, you have to start writing your own things, so I'll definitely start working towards that. I don't want to just be on Twitter. Like, it's fun, but I definitely want to do more impactful, like, real-world things. So, yeah, and then hopefully I'll have way more awesome, interesting things to talk about when I start taking part in those things. So, yeah, I might start a Substack. We'll see.
It's free. I have one. You just do it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's fiction, so I don't really talk about it that much, but it's out there.
I'm going to find it.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, please do.
I will. Eva, thank you so much for letting me bear you and sketch you in this kind of brief discussion. I know that a lot of people that see in your work will appreciate being able to hear you ask or try to answer my embarrassing questions.
Your questions are great, and I'm a really big fan. I couldn't even believe you wanted to talk to me.
Oh, so. Get out of town. I've wanted to talk to you for a while, so I'm glad we...
Oh, I know. Before I disappeared, I know. It all got too much, and I just needed a break. So, but I am very, very flattered. So, thank you.
Congratulations for reaching the end of the discussion. If you enjoyed it, do be sure to leave a review or a comment or a thumbs up or whatever you need to do to show that glorious algorithm that this is some good stuff. And do be sure to go and check that back catalog, as it is brimming full of fantastic conversations. Links to provide monetary support are down there in the description as well. Have a good night.